It is Ask the Mayor on this Thursday with Beatrice Mayor Bob Morgan as we talk about City of Beatrice issues. Good morning, Mayor. How are you today?
Good morning, Doug. I'm doing good.
Good.
Looks like it's another windy day.
Yeah.
Might be a little warm, I think, is it today, and then it starts maybe a downhill slide.
Yeah, a little bit of rain maybe late Friday night into Saturday, which we could use.
Oh, absolutely.
It's getting pretty bone dry out there. I noticed lawns are getting a little stressed around the community, and I know we looked out our back door this morning. I thought, boy, if we don't get some water there pretty soon, it's gonna have dirt left the way it's going.
It's been a tough September.
Yeah, it's kind of started actually back in August when we weren't really seeing the rain, and it's kind of great for getting harvest done, but it's not. Need some moisture.
I think everybody would agree a couple inches of rain and a breather from harvest would be okay.
Yep. Something I just thought of this. Somebody asked me, before we get into the main body of our program today, somebody asked me a couple days ago, earlier this week, specific project in town, the big hole next to the municipal auditorium where the water work was done. They were wondering, is that going to be closed up anytime soon? That's where that water main project was. And they were just wondering, what's the holdup, or what's the?
Well, that's part of that 2nd and 3rd Street renovation project on Ella there. Mm-hmm. That's going to kind of be at least a sample of what we might want to do with the Court Street project. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, it was an old main. Everything needed to be replaced. So they're replacing that before they do anything else to that 2nd and 3rd Street. So they'll get it closed up for sure. Yeah. It's just taking a little bit of time as they replace that old water main, and that way, at the end of the day, we really try really hard not to do a project and then about 2 years later we rip it up because we've got a bad water main. So
kind of look like the main itself might be in, but it's just that trench like right next to the kind of right next to the city building, as a matter of fact, where it kind of squeezed to get around there. So, but hopefully
we'll get there.
It'll get there sooner or later. So, we have quite a bit to talk about today, and I know just about every local government has dealt with budget matters here in the last 2 or 3 weeks. I know the school has approved their budget. Gage County approved theirs yesterday. You guys approved the second part of the biennium Monday night. Actually, you had approved it before. You're just making adjustments to it. But,
correct.
Maybe sum up how it went, just the adjustments you had to make for fiscal 24-25.
A lot of the adjustments came with projects. When projects were scheduled for 23 that fell over into 24, which increased what you spent in 24, and then there's projects in 24 that you wanted to finish up. A perfect example is 33rd and Lincoln. Mm-hmm. That we had money set aside for some of that to be in 24 and some of it to be in 25. Mm-hmm. And now if you look at it, by September 30, they may be done with 33rd Street. Mm-hmm. And so those bills would be paid, of course, how we do our accounting by September 30th. So that would probably increase what 2024 looked like, but it's going to be a decrease in what 2025 looks like. Mm-hmm. And so there's a number of little accounting moves that need to be done to basically make sure that the money that is spent is spent. We keep track of what we spend each year. So by the time you do the decrease and the increase in over a 2-year period, it's going to be basically a wash. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we put our accounting and pay our bills in the year that they're due.
I don't recall how many cycles the city has gone through with biennial budgeting. I want to say three or four maybe, but maybe that's too many. But the decision to go to that back whenever that was made for both Board of Public Works and the city, I can see the rationale kind of for doing it because you kind of don't have to keep going through it just every year. But now that you look at having to adjust for these projects, are there maybe advantages or drawbacks to doing a 2-year budget? And is it better to stay with that or go back to the annual type thing?
I think there's probably more benefits to doing over a 2-year period of time. Mm-hmm. What it really does is it makes us hone in on 2 years and what are the expenses going to be in those 2 years, so we can look at a little larger 24-month period rather than a 12-month period of our expenditures. Mm-hmm. So I think at the end of the day, not only do we look at that 24-month, but on capital projects, we ask our department heads to look out 8 years. And so the first 2 years is in that biennium budget. And by doing that, I think it helps us just kind of align some projects and take a look at, well, for instance, in 2025, we'll probably issue bonds for some of the equipment and some of the things that we need. It allows us to see when we need to go into the bonds, how long do we pay off of our debt, and I think it has made us in a very strong financial position.
Another reduction in tax rate. How have you been able to do that? Is that mainly the amount that's brought in through sales tax, or just kind of a combination of watching what you do and not spending where you necessarily have to?
I think it's three things. I think it's being prudent and watching what we spend. That's the first thing. The second thing is, and the second and third probably go together. That's the hard part about, yes, we lowered our levy. And at the end of the day, through the county assessor's office, they increased some of the valuation. And so by the time you look at both of those, we try to hold the line. But if your evaluations go up, certainly you can lower your levy, and in transparency terms, you have about the same amount of money.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's one of the things that is the hardest thing for people to understand is that, yes, the levy's lower, and we're very happy about that, and we're very prudent with taxpayer dollars. But at the end of the day, there's also that other component of valuation. So when you multiply it out, it basically sometimes makes it easier to lower that tax levy. So, long and short of it, that's kind of the transparent version of what, and you see it in a number of the schools and the city and the county. It deals with where that levy sits, because what we don't want to do, we don't want to try to take more money than what we need. And so by lowering that levy, it allows us to take what we do need.
Having a second revenue source like local sales tax, how much has that helped out the city over the years in getting some things done? Because on top of that, voters also approved additional sales tax to help with like the fire station and things like that. But just the original local sales tax, I think it was for streets and other economic development and things.
But it helps tremendously. It brings in, again, a revenue stream that helps us keep our tax levy down. And, you can probably, property taxes where you get your tax levy. With that sales tax, I think it helps lighten that burden on the tax levy, but also then shares the expenditures across a wider group of individuals.
When things were really costing a lot more with high inflation, one of the, I guess that's a drawback for consumers, but actually, isn't it for a city that has a local sales tax? It's kind of a momentary jump in revenue, isn't it?
It can be.
Yeah.
It certainly can, yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to go back to the action by the Fed yesterday to cut its benchmark rate by a half point. You mentioned the fact that the potential for bonding some big projects coming up in the near future here. Not general obligation, but paid off by fees and utility rates, things like that. How, if at all, will that affect you, do you think, just that move that they're cutting their benchmark and kind of the spillover you see from that?
Well, I think, for everyone, I think you'll see a smaller reduction into, you're going to see a reduction, of course, into like mortgage rates, maybe car rates. Bonds will certainly be at a little less money, so that's a good thing. End of the day, the CD rates will be a little less too, so there's always the pluses and the minuses there.
Yeah.
But I think it will probably, we're going to keep an eye on that to figure out, this is the first cut, and they're going to meet again, December-ish?
Yeah, they were talking about maybe another reduction in November or December, and then they were kind of looking out into the future that there may be other reductions as you get through the next 2 years.
So you take a look at that, and you keep looking at what the rates are for those bonds, and you try to, again, be prudent with money, and when you borrow, you try to borrow at the least amount of expense you can.
Yeah. Periodically, too, I know the city's refinanced on a few issues,
we have.
too. So
we have. Right now, our indebtedness is very low. Our bonds, most of the bonds that we have are paid off, which allows us then to move on and get more bonds to keep us within the limits of where we want to be from a liability standpoint. It just happens that now it'll, instead of getting, gosh, I think some of those rates that we got for bonds were like 1.5 and 2.0.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll see that.
No, probably not that low, but yeah.
But it'll be it'll be very economical.
Yeah.
And, when you talk about it, one of the things people don't maybe know or think about, some of the equipment that we have to get now is just astronomical.
Yeah.
If you think about today's standards, you don't dig a trench very much. Mm-hmm. Everything's usually bored in, and with bored in, a lot of times you have a vac truck that sucks stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, for our workers, it's a lot safer.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, those can run $500,000.
Yeah. Talking about fire pumper trucks costing near $1 million
Right.
or $800,000.
One we have on order is at $800,000 to replace
Wow.
a 30-year-old pumper. Yeah. So
You got to hope it lasts a lot of years.
we'd like to see it last at least, last as good as the one we've got right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of amazing how, and far past the rate of inflation, some things have just
Yes.
expanded way beyond what people thought they might have been years ago. And of course, there's new standards for how equipment has to operate too, so that's part of it.
Well, and the technology.
Yeah.
I mean, just yesterday, I think with everything, I think you get to the point where the technology has increased the price, but probably made a lot of things more accurate. I was watching the fiber company putting a line into the neighbor's house, and the little knife trencher that they use is run basically by joysticks as the guy walked behind it. Just like a video game, I guess, is what I relate it to. I know that's not fair, but it is. And so, technology continues to increase in everything, and there's a price to technology.
Yeah. Speaking of that, the project that was done in town here, is that with the fiber, is that all completed totally, or is that?
I think Pinpoint's mostly done with everything, I do believe.
That's kind of in the news here lately because yesterday the county paid off their final ARPA payment on the one they were doing.
Right.
And then, of course, you have the other providers that are periodically making expansions and improvements.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the end process of it, the customer should get a pretty good deal out of it if you got all these companies competing to do things.
It does. It helps. It does help. And, it's you and I are old enough to know the dial-up all the way to now. You get 2 gigabytes into your home, and you're going, wow, where did we come from?
I'll be retired, and I probably still won't be using it. I'll just be doing other things. We're born in a different generation. There's just different things.
That's right.
One last thing on the budget, just from the discussion Monday night, you had a council member talk about the number of code enforcement complaints and things you get in the traffic that is generated from a year-to-year basis, and thought that maybe that in a future budget there is a need for more staff there. Is that so, or how do you see that?
Well, certainly we'll take a look at what the councilman was looking at as far as, dealing with a number of code issues. There's always going to be code issues. There's always going to be, what I say are neighbor to neighbor sometimes conflicts. Mm-hmm. And so that does take a lot of time for code enforcement officers. So at the end of the day, we want to make sure we try to make sure we have a good staff there. Mm-hmm. And so we'll take a look at it.
Staffing in total across all city departments, are you pretty satisfied where it's at right now, or do you see any red flags coming up in the future as to we really need more help here or there? We could maybe at least look at it?
Well, I think we monitor that all the time. Mm-hmm. Right now, I think we're really been in pretty good shape. Mm-hmm. We had a number of retirements in the water department, but I think they've pretty well staffed that area. You also have to look at, as things grow, it could be, the electric company, or it could be Mars. Mm-hmm. One thing you want to make sure is you have enough staff that you're not having the rest of the staff do way more than what they need. Mm-hmm. Maybe try to get it done faster. So you want to make sure it's safe for everybody. Mm-hmm. And so it is constantly looking at, from a department head standpoint, is how you're sitting with your labor.
On police and fire staffing, is some of the competitive pressures you were facing, have they eased a bit? Are you in a better position now, or?
I think we're in a pretty good spot. I think, if memory serves me right, I think they had interviews for fire, and I think they found 4 really good candidates. Police department, as we can talk, they did a 1-year agreement, and so we're in really pretty good shape there as well. Those things ebb and flow. I think there's always going to be somewhat of a demand in those 2 fields because, and particularly in the police department, it's becoming a lot harder to convince people to keep cities safe based on even just the political climate.
Yeah. And you face competition from other departments.
You do.
Also looking to fill positions, and for a while there, it almost seemed like there was a minor bidding war going on to try to get people to move from one department to
There
another.
is. I mean, that's the hard part.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, there's a lot of things that go into why you take a job. And at the end of the day, it's certainly the wage is part of that consideration. But I think you also have to look at all the other things that go along with that job and where it sits and where you might have a little more friendly family community to live in. And so, I think that's one of the benefits that we have in Beatrice as people look at coming here to work.
Kind of quality of life things, education for
That's right.
kids and things like that.
Yeah.
Got to take into
So
consideration.
it's more than dollars.
Yeah.
And that's when you think about some of the reasons we put in the parks and the amenities that we do. Number one, it's for our constituents here, but number 2, it's also to make it an inviting place to come and work.
We'll be back with more on Ask the Mayor in just a moment. Back on Ask the Mayor with Mayor Bob Morgan today. One of the other things from the council's meeting this Monday night, the advancement of the development plans for the former Lincoln and Paddock Lane school sites where you want to build residential housing there. There's quite a bit of land on both of those sites there. Wondering about the timing of it. How, the city being the developer of it, how much interest has there been? And I know it's really early on in this, but how much interest has there been from builders themselves? And what's the prospect of, how long it's going to take to see those sites maybe totally developed? Are we talking a 5-10 year thing, or what do you think?
Well, certainly if the feds keep cutting the interest rate, it'll be a quicker fill.
Yeah.
This will be related.
Yeah.
No, I think there's been a number of builders who have contacted the city about what we're doing there. Again, at the end of the day, we would have loved to have a big developer come in and want to develop one whole site, but we certainly don't have anybody knocking on our door to do that. But a way that we're going to be able to work on those 2 lots or those 2 areas, especially with TIF financing availability to each person who buys a lot there, there's going to be some good, what I would say, pricing. I think it's laid out very well as far as a planned community. So I think there's been some strong interest as we move forward. Now, again, strong interest is just what it is. It's strong interest. So we'll see once the infrastructure is in place how things go. But certainly if the economy's, the inflation is cooling off and the feds take a couple of more cuts, I think that's pretty favorable timing-wise for that development. I think between Paddock and Lincoln, you're looking about 48-ish lots. That's been one of the stumbling blocks for us is to not have any sites, and now that we do. And like I said, we've had a few builders who have contacted and been interested. I think the first thing is to get the infrastructure in, and then they'll see where they can move.
I see. Update on the, I always call it the Paddock Hotel. That's the former Kensington, too. We've gone through that before, so I won't mention that again. But you did, as far as the transfer date from Main Street to the city, and then eventually it would be transferred to the developer working on that. That's been moved, a little bit later?
Maybe a little bit later. I think it's October 31st, Halloween. But I think we'll have it done before then.
Yeah.
And then somewhere between 60 and 90 days later, we'll be able to get it transferred to Hoppy, the developer, which is, again, it sits there right on the 6th and Court. So I think if we rewind the clock about 2 years when, the Paddock Kensington closed, we're all going, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? Because it is a cornerstone there. I think that as we move forward, we're hoping that's going to be a really neat project.
As it has sat there for a couple of years, people worry about when a building is not being used. It can deteriorate
Right.
without that daily attention. Has it stayed in fairly good condition, do you think?
It has stayed in fairly good condition. It hasn't necessarily been unattended. I know that the Parks and Recs folks have gone through it several times. Over the course of those years, we also cleaned it out, and so there's been people in and out of it for those 2 years, and checked on a weekly or monthly basis. So at the end of the day, it's still in really pretty good shape, and also the developers have been in and out considerable amount of time. I think they were here maybe sometime this week even with some of the subcontractors and contractors to get a little better pricing and bidding as they look at the renovation.
When a building is on the National Register of Historic Places like that, it really would be a sad thing to not see it used for some purpose.
It would.
In the future. So,
it would.
Yeah. Back to wrap up our Ask the Mayor program today with Mayor Bob Morgan in just a moment. Back with a few minutes left on Ask the Mayor today with Beatrice Mayor Bob Morgan. We referenced the police contract earlier. It was a 1-year extension. Since you're going into a new biennium after this next year, is there a thought to go with, I know the fire department one, if I remember right, was a 6-year?
Fire department, IBEW were 6.
6, okay. Police contract, is that usually lesser of a term, or what are you thinking there?
Each union's different. I mean, you sit down with each union during the negotiations periods, and that was done. I guess I wasn't mayor at the point in time the contracts went through there, but I think a lot of times with 6-year contracts gives you some stability of where you're at. I don't know whether we'll look at that again. Typically, they're somewhere between 2, 3, and 4 years. 6 was a long period of time.
Yeah.
A lot of things can happen as it did during those 6 years. So we'll see if that's still something they would like to do, because, negotiations are just something that you go through and you come out on the other side. There's different opinions a lot of times on one side and the other, and you try to come to agreement. So, it's nice to be able to have a little longer than a year because it does take a lot of time and energy on both parties.
Well, it's kind of hard to determine what the inflation rate's going to be, too.
Well, absolutely.
Absolutely. Long term, maybe not over the 2 years.
Yeah, I don't know whether we'll go 2 or 3 or what they'll do as we negotiate, police in 25, and the others, I think, were probably October each of 26.
I see. Back to 33rd and Lincoln for a moment. That thing is really going quickly. I was kind of surprised that, the original thought was that back when you were planning for it, of course, the school was going to be up and operating before everything was
we knew
done.
that.
But you kind of thought, this might be well into 25 or at least summer of 25 or something, but kind of looks like things are going along a lot better than that.
I think we really thought it was going to be spread out over 2 years. Then contractors came in and put in a bid and said, we'd like to have it done by Christmas. And we're thinking, wow, that's amazing. That's basically one semester of inconvenience. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And then they got, of course, the machine that they pour the concrete with is huge. And they're pouring it, at least 8 inches deep. So it's got a great foundation. And they move.
Yeah.
When they decide to pour concrete, they move. So I'm thinking that hopefully by the end of this month, 33rd Street will be open, which means that you'll be getting to school by 33rd Street. But the roundabout will also be open, so you'll have access to more entry points to the elementary. And then you'll have that small segment by Christ Community Church they have to go back and do.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about that. That one might take them a little longer because I don't know if the big machine will fit in there, and there's a number of driveways that we have to deal with. And so, the more things that are in your way, the longer it can take. But they want to be done, close to Halloween.
Wow. That is amazing because I thought for sure that last segment on, I'm not an engineer or a superintendent, but the way it was sounding, that last segment to the west of the church, I was thinking that was into 25 for sure. But
yeah, no, they want to probably be out of here. I think they want to be out of here no later than November.
Wow.
Now, that's the only plus that I see with having so much dry weather.
Yeah.
It has helped that project immensely.
Well, you look around town, too, some of the repair work that's been able to
Right.
go on, too, like 7th Street this week, north of the courthouse.
Right.
For about, a 4-block stretch in 2 phases.
Right.
Making some repairs there. I know Jason's crews have done asphalt repairs, concrete repairs, kind of picking and choosing where there's some really bad
Right,
spots.
right.
By Family Fair store on, 19th, they did some repairs there.
They did some
got that
repairs there and
reopened,
got
so
that opened.
Has allowed you to see a lot of stuff get done.
It does.
So, yeah.
There are some pluses to the dry weather, but we are in Nebraska, and the range certainly helps drive our economy. So I think we're to the point now where we get a little bit of rain, we can all take a breather.
Well, Friday night and Saturday looks like
Perfect.
You get a lot more done in the next day or two, and then get a brief shower there.
That's
a while.
right.
That'll be good. Mayor, thanks a lot for being in with us again on Ask the Mayor.
Thank you.